Hello all, I welcome you all to the 16th lecture in this course E614. We will continue with our discussion on metal semiconductor junctions from the last time. So we discussed in situations where we have a metal with a work function Q psi m interfacing with a semiconductor with an electron affinity Q chi. Fermi levels will match at the interface and it exhibits a barrier for the electrons to go from the metal to a semiconductor of height q psi b. And we saw this psi b is called the Schottky barrier. It is independent of doping density, right? Because psi b is just q psi m minus q chi. Q chi and q psi m are both material parameters. It is independent of the doping density. It is independent of the bias. Right? Under these conditions, we saw one particular aspect which can change the barrier height, which was image force lowering. And then we saw that even under zero, so this diagram that we have drawn was under equilibrium conditions. So even under equilibrium conditions, we saw that because of the fact that the electron faces a potential, namely the barrier built-in potential or the forward bias or the reverse bias potential, because the electron faces a potential, its actual work function or the barrier that forms that presence between the metal semiconductor interface is not q psi b, but then has a reduction in value even at the intrinsic case because of the fact that you have a built-in potential, right? So this is at v equal to 0, and at positive biases you actually have an increase. This is at v lesser than 0, right? All these things are due to the fact that you have image force lowering. It is due to the fact that an electron at an at the proximity to a metal which is kept at equipotential faces an attractive force, right? And hence the total barrier or the work function is lower, right? So this is what we saw last time. So today we will see one other aspect which leads to reduction in the barrier height, and which is called as interface traps, or which is caused by interface states. So interface states are presented in most semiconducting materials, or most materials present interface states because there exists interface states because there exists defects or discontinuities at the surface. The surface atoms are not as well coordinated as the bulk atoms. Let us take for instance silicon, whose bulk atomic density is somewhere around 5 into 10 to the power 22 per centimeter cube. This is what we saw in the first few lectures, if you remember, right? Its surface atoms is typically of about n to n naught power 2 by 3, something of the order of 10 power 15 per centimeter cube per centimeter square. Basically, this is the density of atoms at the surface, and these surfaces always have some sort of defects, contaminations, dangling bonds, and such. All these things which can either absorb an electron and take a negative charge, or have a vacancy presenting a positive atomic charge, and hence they tend to be charged, right? So now let us take an example. Let us take for instance a silicon substrate, right? And which is intrinsic, right? So basically it has some Fermi level here, and it presents some defect or interface states at the surface. So I'm drawing it such that this is the surface, right? So you have a bunch of states, and at 0 Kelvin, and the energy level or the states which are occupied by electrons. So remember, these states are presented in the forbidden energy gap. These are because of irregularities in the crystal lattice, right? So basically your interface has states in the energy gap as well, and at 0 Kelvin, the energy states till which it is occupied, you draw the Fermi level. This might be very different from the intrinsic Fermi level that we saw, right? So basically your interface states also changes the intrinsic Fermi level, but then we are not going there yet. So all these states which lie below the Fermi level are neutral, and they have some charges, and all the states above them are also neutral, and then they do not have. So these are vacant defect states, these are vacant states, and these are occupied states. And these things we are talking at 0 Kelvin, right? And these states which are below the Fermi level are called as donor interface states, because they are neutral when it is occupied, and at higher temperatures they start losing their atoms to the vacant states, which are called as acceptor states. Which are neutral when empty, but then they accept an electron and become negatively charged. So let us write again. So basically donor interface states are neutral when occupied and positively charged when empty, and acceptor states are neutral when empty and negatively charged when occupied. So you can see why the states below the Fermi level at 0 Kelvin are called donor states, right? So they are occupied naturally, and the acceptor states, which are states above the Fermi level, are empty and they are vacant. So this is the state at which at 0 Kelvin and the entire material is neutral, right? And if you raise the temperature, you can see that the electron may jump from the donor state to the acceptor states, thereby creating a positive charge in the donor state and a negative charge in the acceptor state, thereby keeping the entire material neutral all the time, right? This is slightly different from the donor acceptor levels that we see in the initial stages, but then their definition remains consistent. A donor atom in a semiconductor basically is neutral when it has an electron, but then it donates an atom to the electron to the conduction band and becomes positively charged, right? The same thing we see here, but then their actual positions in the band gap are slightly offset, right? You can see that easily. Fine. So at this stage, let us consider what happens if we start doping, right? So basically this is at 0 Kelvin and the intrinsic semiconductor, and let us say that if I have applied some additional dopants and then I move the Fermi level close to the conduction band, right? So let us take the same semiconductor, right? And then I am moving the Fermi level closer to the conduction band. Remember, we saw the original level here. So this was the EFI, right? And I am going to mark its separation from the valence band as Q psi naught, some energy level, right? So this energy level I am going to mark as Q psi naught. So now that I have changed the Fermi level, right? So basically I have a lot of acceptor states which are here. These are donor states which were once fully occupied, right? And these states which were initially empty, you remember, because I have doped it, I have a lot of electrons in the conduction band. The electrons will fall down to the acceptor energy levels, which will take the electron and turn to be negatively charged, right? That's what we saw here. Acceptor are negatively charged when occupied. So these guys take an electron and become negatively charged. And at the interface, so basically we are talking about this region, which is the interface region. Let us take it for a particular uh, uh, gap of delta, right? In these regions, now it starts to be depleted, right? Like in any interface, think about this, we still are not interfacing with any external third party material. It is still the same semiconductor with defect structures at the interface. Now these defects starts to accept electrons from the conduction band, thereby depleting it. You will form donor atoms here, like sort of a depletion, and the bands will start to bend, right? So basically you will have the conduction band which bends like this, right? Because your defect levels have started to occupy, are starting to get charged, right? Now under this situation, let us talk about what happens if I interface with a metal, and then let us see what happens to the barrier height and what happens to the let's calculate the barrier height. Okay, so we are taking, so basically this becomes EFN, right? So now I'm going to draw a similar band structure. This is a metal. Oh, let's do it here itself, right? So here let us take and interface it with a metal EFN, which has a higher work function than the semiconductor. So let us take this as E naught. So this is larger than this one. This is Q psi S. This is Q psi m. So Q psi m is larger than Q psi s. So metal has a larger work function. So the electrons will now move from the conduction band in the semiconductor to the Fermi level in the metal, right? Also, you can also think that the interface states will also start sharing charges, right? But then let us go into it one by one, right? So basically, when I make this interface, you can see that now I will have a metal work function Q psi m, right? And I will have a small dip in the potential equal to del psi. I'll calculate del psi, what it is, that is coming from the interface charge density, right? I have a negative charge density at the interface, and this negative charge density leads to a dip in the potential from the metallic work function that we saw before. This is E naught, and from here we again have our traditional Q chi drop and the band. This is E naught. So you have Q chi everywhere, right? The Fermi levels should line up. And this is QBI, the built-in potential, right? So under these situations, the actual barrier height psi Q psi b is now Q psi m minus del psi minus Q psi. So you already have a barrier potential which is reduced by the factor of the potential drop over the interface, right? Now what's the potential drop at the interface? You can calculate this from the Poisson's equation. Del psi is basically the total charge at the metal semiconductor interface multiplied by the distance del psi, right? So basically it is the width of the interface into QM, charge at the metal interface, by epsilon I. So this is what will turn out, because this is a point charge density. You can calculate the field or the potential by this particular formula, which actually comes down from the Poisson's equation very easily. And you know the charge in the metal is basically minus of del by epsilon, which is the dielectric constant, which is Q at the interface plus Q in the depletion width. Your metal charge density is just because of charge neutrality, right? Your metal charge density should be equal and opposite to the total charge at the interface as well as the depletion width. So this is what typically happens, right? So now let us see what happens to the barrier height for various density of interface charges. So DIT, which is called as interface charge density, if DIT is very small, then basically your QI is very small. QI is the charge at the interface is very small, and your delta, the interface area, is very small, right? So this will give us my del psi tending to 0. So therefore your Q psi B will go back to our previous calculation that we saw last time, psi m minus Q psi. So this will go to the standard semiconductor band structure that we saw before in the absence of interface. If DIT is very small, if the density of the interface states is very small, you will go back to the thing which is trivial, right? Now what happens if this density is very large? What happens if the interface, at the interface you have a huge density of negative charges? So when it interfaces, you can see that the charges which move from the semiconductor to the metal will mostly be at the interface, and no change in electronic charge density will happen at the conduction band, right? Let me draw this structure here. At very high charge, at very high DIT, remember, so basically this is the metal, right? So basically I have the interface here. Some del psi is the drop, this is Q psi m, right? And you have some drop here which is Q chi, and our depletion width goes here. If I have a lot of defect densities here, you can see that most of the charge which goes from metal to the semiconductor will be from the defect sites, and there will be no change in the depletion width or the reduction in the electron density at the interface, right? So what happens is this separation, this is basically EF, right? So EF minus EC, the top of EC here, EC of 0, does not really change, right? So the actual barrier which is presented here, this is Q psi B, the actual barrier does not depend upon the metal work function at all, because whatever happens at the interface, the charges are being replaced or charges are being shared between metal and semiconductor only at the interface, and no change in the depletion width ever happens. And at the end of the day, your Fermi levels should match. So the barrier that the metal will face is the separation between the Fermi level and the conduction band edge in the semiconductor, which is just, so Q psi B will always be Eg minus Q psi naught. So remember this. So we saw this Q psi naught is basically the number of neutral defect densities at the interface that we saw before, right? Now that our defect density interface is so large, any change in the there will be no change in the Fermi level, right? So a very small change in the Fermi level will give you such a large change in charge density that there is no actual change in Fermi level, right? So you have what is called as Fermi pinning. The Fermi level is pinned at Q psi naught plus EV. If the defect density level is so large, because irrespective of what the work function is, you will have the charge exchange from the metal and the defect levels only, and hence there is no change in the charge density at the interface in the semiconductor, which makes the barrier height to be just a function of Eg minus Q psi naught, and hence not a function of the metal work function or the bias potential that you apply, right? So Fermi pinning happens when you have very high interface defect densities, and it is pinned at the energy levels where the defect densities are neutral. You will pin the Fermi levels at the neutral defect density level. At high DIT, Fermi level in the semiconductor is is pinned, this means that no doping density will also change the Fermi level at the interface. Right, and the barrier height is not affected by the metal work function. These are important consequences of the fact that you have very high interface defect densities, and this is this is not an extraordinary situation, and most semiconductors have very high interface defect densities that the actual barrier potential really does not change with the metals, whether you can use let's say the silicon, gallium arsenide, gallium phosphide, cadmium sulfide. All these materials have a barrier height independent of the metal that you want to contact, and this is because the Fermi levels are pinned at the interface by the interface defect densities. Right? So with this treatment of this, let us see another way in which barrier height can be modified, which is called as barrier height adjustment. How do people, so basically we saw that the barrier height cannot be changed by so many ways. Now let us see how people actually change the barrier height. The best way till now that has been that people have been tried is to change the doping density at the interface. And let's take an example of a doping profile here very close to the interface. This is x distance from the interface, and I am plotting Nd minus Na, the doping donor doping density minus acceptor doping density. Right? If I have a profile something of this sort, can you estimate what kind of field I will have? Right? So I will have a very steep field till here because you have a very high doping density, right? And then I will have a moderate slope here. Now this very high electric field at the interface, now what happens is this leads to a potential or a barrier profile something like this. Right? Because the slope, so this is because of image force lowering that we previously saw, right? And this steep slope in the potential is because of the fact that you till here, right, you have a very steep slope, and this is due to the fact that you have a very strong electric field here, and then the slope starts to slowly change because of the electric field, and this steep slope gives you some very small barrier for electrons at these energy levels to tunnel across. So this gives you a kind of a feeling that the actual barrier height is not this q psi bi, but a reduced barrier height q psi bi r, some reduced value, right? And this reduced value comes because of the fact that this very thin barrier, due to very high doping density at regions close to the interface, gives you very high tunneling probability of an electron at high energy levels, right? So this almost looks like it is transparent, and your actual barrier starts from this level where the width is significantly large for the electrons to tunnel. We have seen the tunneling probabilities on the I don't know if you have seen initial quantum mechanical calculations for tunneling probability across a square barrier. We can deal with this if you really want. Please post questions regarding this. The tunneling probability goes exponentially with the width of the barrier. Another way to engineer this barrier so that you have very low tunneling probability is the exact opposite of this. If I have Nd minus Na, something like this. Now the electric field can be drawn for the same purpose like this, right? And the actual barrier will look like, right, where you actually have an enhancement in the field QB than the actual barrier that you will get, right? And this enhancement is because of the fact that you have a different potential at the interface. So the shape of the electric field, the direction of the electric field here gives you an increase in the a different slope in the conduction band, right? So the conduction band actually starts to raise before it starts to fall, so giving you a larger or higher barrier than the other case, right? So this is called barrier height adjustment. This is how people do by changing the doping density at the interface. uh, I don't know if you have heard about people who are doing alloying for the interfacing, like silicides, uh, aluminum alloys at the interface. All these things just change the interface doping density, giving you some very different profiles of the conduction band close to the interface, giving you higher tunneling probability and such. Right? So with these things, now let us look at finally the current transfer properties of a metal semiconductor interface. Now let us go back to the band structure. Okay, so we have EFM, and let's say something like this. This is Q psi B. An electron from the semiconductor side, for it to be transported across the barrier, it should have enough energy thermally provided to cross this particular, to have energies larger than this Ci, right? So if electrons have energies larger than this, then they can just tunnel across this, or they can just transport across this barrier, and this process, so let's say all these electrons will just go without any problem, right? And the population of such electrons or such high energies uh, just depends upon the temperature of this distribution, right? So basically you have a Fermi-Dirac distribution here. If this is the Fermi level, temperature determines how many electrons are there here. Either you can have something like this, or you can have something like this. All these things depends upon some KT, KT1 and KT2. If temperature is large enough, you will have some population here, and then all of these things can easily go, and hence this transport is thermally motivated. It is called as thermal emission. Or for electron energies which are smaller than this barrier height, the probability to actually cross the tunnel depends upon the width here, and it is called as field emission. Why? Because if you actually apply a reverse bias under these situations, you can see that you will, the Fermi level starts to move, and then you will have something like this at higher and higher biases, right? So as you increase the reverse bias, your actual field at the interface is now so large, your depletion width is now so large, so you have a much higher potential at the interface. This allows the probability for electrons to actually tunnel, or probability for the electrons to actually be injected from the metal side to the semiconductor side, right? So this is called as field emission, which is enhanced as the width of this barrier gets reduced, and this is mostly field motivated because it does not need the thermal energy to go above the barrier height. So now let us very quickly calculate what is the current IV relationships for the thermal emission as well as for the tunneling probability across this interface, and then we will stop our discussions on metal semiconductor transport with that, right? So the actual current from semiconductor to metal at in thermal emission is basically some integral of all energies above the barrier height, EF plus Q psi B, two thing, okay, Q Vx dn. So the number of electrons that are above these energy levels, above the barrier height, and their velocities by charge will give you the actual current. So how do we calculate this? We know this dn is basically n of E f of E dE, which will turn out to be 4 pi 2m star power 3 by 2 by h cube root of E minus EC. We know that the density of states goes as root of E, right? And we are taking a non-degenerate semiconductor, so it is basically E power minus E minus EF. EF we write as EC minus Q psi n. Remember, Q psi n is the separation between EC and the Fermi level by kT, right? And if we actually if we do some simplification such that E minus EC is basically the actual, basically the energy that the electron has above the conduction band is mostly the kinetic energy, and you can write the velocities as Vx, actual velocity is Vx square plus Vy square plus Vz square, and you take that the minimum energy or minimum velocity which is required to cross the barrier, that is half m star V naught square, is actually Q times psi Bi minus V. Psi Bi is the built-in potential minus V. So basically in this case, you know that this is psi Bi, and any potential minus V is what the minimum potential that is required to actually go across this height, right? So this is the minimum energy that is required to, minimum energy over the conduction band which is required to cross the barrier from the semiconductor side, right? So if you replace all these things into this equation, you will get the current from semiconductor to the metal to be 4 pi q m star k square by h cube t square e power minus q psi bn by kt e power q v by kt, and this v is the applied potential that we got here, right? And this is typically written as a t square e power minus q psi bn by kt e power q v by kt, and this is a star, and a star is what is called as the Richardson constant, and which turns out to be 4 pi q m star k square by h cube. So this a is called the Richardson constant for thermionic emission, and which, for if you assume m to be a free electron mass, which turns out to be about 120 amps per centimeter square Kelvin square, right? So this equation is one of the most famous equations, and which determines the thermionic emission across a metal semiconductor barrier. We did not derive the entire values, but then you can go into details. It is not very very difficult. You can very quickly arrive at this particular expression for the thermionic emission, and this is typically valid for situations where the barrier height is several times the thermal energy, right? Because we have already assumed the semiconductor to be degenerate. So these are the conditions. One last aspect that we want to visit before we close this chapter on metal semiconductor interfaces is the tunneling current. We briefly saw about this tunneling current in the situation where you have barrier height adjustments, right? So basically we have our metal semiconductor interfaces. The probability of an electron to tunnel from the semiconductor side to the metal depends upon the width of the barrier here, right? So we can actually depends upon the width of the barrier as well as certain. So basically the current from semiconductor to the metal depends upon the constant C square by kt integral Fermi level to the barrier height. Remember, I am not talking about the so basically this is not about electrons which jump from the barrier height, but these are electrons from in the conduction band which is at much lower energies than the barrier height. So we're talking about tunneling in these levels, right? So you take all the electrons in these levels, you have the probability of it to be filled in the semiconductor side, and you need the probability of these levels to be empty on the metal side, and the tunneling probability. The tunneling probability T is determined by the width of this barrier, and this we saw is basically exponentially dependent on the width that we specify here. Right? This is the tunneling current, and this tunneling probability is the dominant. Tunneling current is a dominant behavior at low temperatures and high doping densities. Why? At very high doping densities, you know that you have a very steep profile because you have very high built-in potential, right? As well as the depletion width is much smaller, so your potential is actually higher. So you will have a much smaller region in which there is a slope in the conduction band. So under these conditions, your tunneling current is the most dominant, is the dominant transport. And in all other regions, mostly at high temperatures, you have the thermionic emission, and you have a thermionic emission plus tunneling conductance in any region in between. So at forward bias, so let us say you have thermionic emission at, so basically from the semiconductor to the metal side at forward bias, and you have the field emission at lower bias potentials at lower temperatures and high doping densities, and in any region in between you have the thermionic emission plus field emission. When we have reverse bias, right, you have thermionic emission from the metal to the semiconductor side, right? You have field emission here, and you have thermal emission plus field emission somewhere in between, right? So with these discussions, I will stop the treatment on metal semiconductor, and next time we meet, let us go to bipolar junction transistors and their treatment. Thank you.